Welcome to episode 26 of the Animorphs Read-Along broadcast. Today we are talking about the Hork Bajir Chronicles. The War for the Hork Bajir is a very important chapter in the history of the Yeerk Empire and really in the formation of the Yeerk Empire. We've gotten in bits and pieces about this before, but this sort of gives us the full story. So if the Animorphs are taking place in the 90s, then this story is taking place about 30 years prior. This book takes us all the way back to the very beginning when the Yeerks betrayed the Andalites' trust. There are three main characters for this book, and one of them is a young Andalite girl named Aldrea, who is Prince Sero's daughter. So Sero being the one whose mistakes inspired a whole new law called the Law of Sero's Kindness. Sero and his family were actually initially placed on the Hork Bajir planet as sort of like an insult. It's a pointless mission. It's sort of, them in exile. When the Yeerks show up, they're not anticipated at all, and it takes months and months and months for any Andalites to even show up, and then even then, it's not enough. This war is looking pretty hopeless from the get-go, and that is why Prince Alaran, or Aloran, whatever his name is, decides to use a quantum virus to just kill all the Hork Bajir rather than let the Yeerks have them. This book introduces us to the concept of a Hork Bajir seer, and one of our three point of view characters is this seer, Dak-Kami. We find out later that the Hork Bajir were genetically engineered by another race called the Arn, and that they were engineered to be simple-minded. The seers are this fluke in the system, but the seers have the same mental capacities as the Arn, or as an Andalite. So Dak-Kami is very smart. He's able to understand things that other Hork Bajir are not able to understand. It's because of his intelligence that he's able to strike up a friendship with Aldrea, the young Andalite, and it's a friendship that eventually develops into something more. Their relationship is always affected by the fact that she's an Andalite. Andalites, as we know, are pretty arrogant about their own race, but also they seem to be far more concerned with hurting the Yeerks than with helping the Hork Bajir. And this is an issue throughout this whole book. Like, Aldrea manipulates and lies to Dak, and then when her people show up, it's even worse. Hork Bajir are pawns in this war between the Andalites and the Yeerks, and most of them are too simple-minded to realize it. In the end, Aldrea chooses the Hork Bajir over her own people. She's so disgusted by this idea of using the quantum virus that she's willing to sort of leave her people behind. She and Dak are able to have their happy ending to a certain extent, and they go off and end up having kids, and Jerahemi, who we know from book 13 and who is telling this story to Tobias, actually is their grandson. The other story that's being told here besides Dak's and Aldrea's is that of Esplin, a young Yeerk, and I, being I guess pretty dense, did not realize until the end of the book that this was Visser 3. I don't know, there's something about Esplin that I kept on rooting for. I was like, he's gonna become a good person, like Esplin's not a bad guy. He's gonna realize that what the Yeerks are doing is wrong. Obviously, that was incorrect, but it is fascinating to see him when he's almost in this like innocent, naive state. I mean, he was always ambitious, but that moment when he gets his first host and it's like a Ged body for 15 minutes and he's just like, the joy, it's incredible. And it's also fascinating how he was kind of like obsessed with Andalites. He has like a deep-seated admiration for Andalites, and I think his obsession with getting an Andalite host is about more than just like the power. I think he also kind of wants to be an Andalite. Obviously, he does not get his wish in this book, but he will down the road. The Hork Bajir planet is super fascinating. Like, if I could pick one book from this whole series to be like illustrated, it would totally be this book because I'm just so fascinated with it. Like this steep valley with these gigantic trees that just go on and on and on. These really cool like Hork Bajir platforms in the trees where they sit around and tell stories. Mother Sky, Father Deep. It's all really cool. One of my favorite moments in this book is just reading about Aldrea when she's a Chadu, and she and Dak just like swinging through the trees, flying along. It's beautiful. Like, I want to live there. One thing that's really interesting for me about this book is this question of like the value of intelligence. The Hork Bajir are not an intelligent race, but they have big hearts and they have their own way of doing things. I think as the book progresses, we're really taught to value that. You know, Aldrea looks down on the Hork Bajir, and so do the Yeerks, and so do the rest of the Andalites. And Dak gets really frustrated by this. Dak says, "You Andalites have more respect for the vicious Yeerks or the cowardly Arn than you have for the Hork Bajir who fight and die at your sides. We're too stupid to lie and manipulate. We're too stupid to be ruthless. Until you came, Andalite, we were too stupid to know how to kill." Now look what has become of us, the despised children of the Arn, slaves of the Yeerks, tools of the Andalites. It's a good speech, and it's true, the Hork Bajir may have been simple, but they do a whole lot less harm than these other three intelligent species. The story is bookended with Tobias going to the Hork Bajir Valley, hearing the story. We get to see that in the new Hork Bajir Free Colony, Jarrah and Ket have had a daughter, and her name is Toby, after Tobias, and she is a seer, just like her great-grandfather. Definitely Toby and the Free Hork Bajir are going to be an important part of the story going forward. So those are all my thoughts about the Hork Bajir Chronicles. If you want to keep up with this read-along, subscribe to this channel or follow me on Twitter, and I will see you on Thursday.